Hey, what's up?
There we go. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you.
Perfect. Awesome.
So let's start off with the skill versus toughness thing.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you prefer, the skill or the toughness?
I mean, me personally, I prefer it's honestly it's a good blend of both, I think is what makes good hockey. The problem is if you go too far one way, it gets out of hand, no matter if it's like if you go too far on the side of toughness, you're gonna end up with something like the LNH, the Quebec League, which I mean it's great for people who enjoy it, but that's obviously a product that's not for everybody. And then if on the other hand, though, if you go on the other side of the too far to the skill side of the spectrum, I find people might get bored. You're going to start seeing, and you see it today where people kind of really miss that old school flair of hockey and that physical aspect of the game. And when it does happen, I think there's a reason that it's still one of the most talked about things that happens in hockey. With the goalie fight last year with Ryan Fanti, and
Don't
the
forget the double
ECHL.
knockout with Yamins and Bellant.
Yeah, exactly. So you got those two, and I mean, every time there's a big fight, whether it doesn't matter what level it's at, whether it's ECHL or NHL, you know, it'll make its rounds on social media. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, I like to see a fight every now and then, but I prefer the skill part just
Mhm.
because I like to see goals. I don't like losing, and goals contribute to not losing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously, you still got to put the black thing in the back of the net, right? So it's like you got to have the right blend of having that skill and the toughness on your team at the same time.
Yeah, and with the roster sizes now, you can't just have an enforcer. You have to have somebody that can put the puck in the net and fight, like a Milan Lucic or a Brad Marchand.
Yeah,
And
exactly. You want to have somebody who it's a skilled game now, so the game's faster than ever. So you got to have guys that you can make sure that aren't the prototypical enforcer that's there just to fight. I think is pretty much out of the game now.
yeah,
Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is up for others to debate. But at the same time, having that guy that like to me, the end of the season last year, the way Nico Blatchman was on the Norfolk Admirals, he was at a half a point per game. So he was on pace for 30 points for a season, and he was still fighting. So I mean, for that, can't ask for much more on a team. Or you got a guy like Kyle Neuber on the Florida Everblades will put up 5 points or 5 goals, contribute on the apples as well, and then still fight at the same time. So having guys like that is still valuable to the team. You just got to make sure you contribute a bit.
yeah, I very much agree. I like seeing those like Justin Vive type players. He
Yeah.
has perennially been like a point per game guy in the ECHL.
Hmm.
I can't say much for guys like Brendan Yamins because he doesn't really put the puck in there much, but he definitely can. He's done it before.
Hmm.
He just doesn't score much, but they are definitely more valuable if they can do both.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, sorry, I just realized my video hasn't been on this whole time. My apologies. Yeah, so you got a guy like Justin Fave. I mean, that's a guy you want on your team. There's a reason he's the captain there, and I mean, he's one of those guys where he's almost like a sneaky heavy, where he's not going to go out of the way to fight all the time because he's valuable on the ice. He's an asset to that team. But when he does fight, he's very good at it. And like having a player like that is super valuable. It almost kind of reminds me of like a Tom Wilson. I know some people might not like some of the hits Tom Wilson. And I know that's a bit of a reason he's gotten a contract extension with Washington that you see. And I mean, you see what he's done. He gets like 20 goals a year. I mean, you can't ask for much more from a player. So I mean, there's a reason he's making like 5 mil a season.
Yeah, and you can't like doubt the ability of guys like that to get in your head either. Hockey's half
Mhm.
mind.
Yeah,
You can
exactly. And from what I've talked
definitely
about
see that
with
effect.
with a bunch of different players I've talked to, you know, fans can only see so much. And it's so I always laugh at that when you see, people always like to jump to conclusions when they see a fight clip or like a scrum or something. And I will say probably 99% of the time that there's something happens on the ice, there was something that happened prior leading up to that. And that's what made
Yeah,
something boil
like
over.
with the Bellant fight, the one that went viral for the double knockout. There's some
Mhm.
context behind that that made it very much warranted.
Yeah.
Apparently, Bellant had thrown a dirty hit on Karen's, and the Cyclones put all of their fighter guys like Five, Allen, Yamins, and I think that Arvin Atwell was out there too. They may have thought it was going to be a line brawl at that point, but Vive went over to their bench to keep Bellin out there. And when Yaman said to Bellin that you're fighting me, it was more of a Vive has done this for the team a lot, and he's getting older in age, so he wanted to step up to the bell and help out.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, answering the bell is something that it's still an unwritten rule in the game of hockey. And it was the same thing last year when you saw Nico Blatchman do the ground and pound to that guy against it was against Maine up there. And people saw the clip and were like, kick Nico out of the league, blah, blah, blah. But then you get the context behind it, and you see that this guy has thrown a couple questionable hits, and so he didn't answer before. And so that was time rose. And the unfortunate part is with enforcing in hockey, it's not a perfect system. Nothing in life is, but at the same time, if you've been asked a couple times and you're not answering the bell, and you're still throwing questionable hits, I mean, you might have something coming to you.
Yeah, there's very few guys in this league that I don't like. Michael Robidos is one of them, just because I feel like he's a dirty player and he's getting suspended like every other game.
Yeah, I will say this. So with me personally, I'm not one on the ice. I don't know what goes on. So I typically try to give players the benefit of the doubt just because I'm a fan looking in from the outside. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not on the ice. I'm not in there in between whistles and shifts for these guys. But I know Michael Robidoux is definitely a polarizing figure in the ECHL, to put it lightly, as of course, as you mentioned, he's had plenty of suspensions in his days. And the same thing though, if he's going to play like that, that's fine. You can do that, be dirty. But as we saw with Darian Skio last year, it made him pay for it and ended up ground and pounding Michael Robidoux. So you can, if you act like a donkey sometimes, it's, and hey, there's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, you're trying to get under the opposing team's skin, but you just got to make sure that that you got to watch your back if the other team has like an Anthony Collins or a Darian Skio, as Michael Robidoux found out last year, unfortunately for him.
And Kalamazoo's trying to put that to the Central Division. They're not going to be the punching bag anymore. They got Yamas, they got Blockman. I think they still have Collins on there, don't they? Or is he on the
Collins is on the Ghost Pirates now. He actually had a fight with Van Boekel last night. It was actually a really good one.
Yeah, so they're definitely not going to be the punching bags in the league anymore, because there was a lot of that happening from what I've heard against Kalamazoo, and they're getting guys that'll stand up now.
Yeah, for sure. I from what I heard, from my understanding, I've heard Anthony Collins was kind of handcuffed a little bit last year. Not sure what it was, but I know at the same time, a lot of there wasn't too many takers in that division. As we know with the ECHL, things will change in the blink of an eye in an off season, compared to the NHL where guys sign. So you're seeing that division become a lot more tough as well. So I think Kalamazoo realized that, and I was like, we need something. So they got Nico Blatchman, Brandon Yemens, and I know Blatchman just got in his first fight last night, and the night prior he had somebody throw a little bit of an elbow at him after the whistle, and Nico took exception to it. So I think it's making a stand saying Kalamazoo's not going to be one to get pushed around these days.
Yeah, and you definitely need those types of players, especially in the ECHL, where they have guys like Nolan Bloyer, who I have a personal vendetta against refereeing games, and like John Linder, Trevor Wolford. Some of these guys aren't the best at their job, so you really need guys that will police each other.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a development league. So, and what folks don't realize is the refs are developing too. So, these are young refs trying to cut their teeth. This is might be their first time being within a pro league. And so I always try to give stripes the benefit of the doubt sometimes, because, and with the ECHL, aside from certain games, there's only one official on the ice instead of two, like at the NHL level. But I know
they were
toying around with it
that last year, but we haven't heard anything about that this year. Honestly,
yeah,
I thought that they could have done the same
it.
thing for full time this whole year if they wanted to. I think that they should have enough funds to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's all, I mean, with minor pro hockey, it's still, we don't know what goes on behind closed door with funding and stuff like that. So I have no clue what gets allocated where. But at the same time, stuff's going to get missed on the ice. And even at the NHL level, you still see stuff get missed, and those are the best officials in the world. And there's two of them on the ice, two linesmen and two officials. So stuff still gets missed. It's a fast paced game. Stuff's always going to get missed. And that's where, games can get out of hand sometimes.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that I sometimes volunteer for the local USPHL team here in the penalty box. So on occasion, I'll be able to go up to a ref and just pick their brain about a call. and they're willing to explain it to you and explain what they think they saw. And
Oh, okay.
I know that these guys are humans, but it really gives you a different aspect of the game, being able to like pick their brain and see what's going on inside of it.
Right. Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I've always thought it'd be cool to get like maybe like an inside documentary or something on actually like linesmen just to see what everything goes through. It's because I people say they want to do like post game interviews with linesmen. I don't know about that. That's kind of a tough spot. That's like
Honestly, I
having a
don't think the linesman should do it, but I do think that especially at the NHL level,
Mhm.
the regular referees
Oh
that they
yeah, excuse
write
me, the
should
referees.
be
Yeah.
explaining their answers after a game, because some of these calls that they make are just, why are you even here if you're going to make that call?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit brutal, but it's a fast-paced game, so it's like it's rough. But it'd be like, I don't know, it's like having a bad day at work and then having to talk about it immediately to a bunch of people. It's like I don't know, that'd be rough for me. I'd feel bad doing that to somebody because it's such a fast game and it's such a quick split decision. But on the other side, when you hear like the mic'd up situations with like Tim Peel, where he's like, oh, I really wanted to give so and so a call. Well, then that's a different story. Then you should be, which as we saw, he was held accountable for it. So something like that I think is a bit different too. So it's a tough job. I feel like there's no winning as a referee or a linesman no matter what you do. But it is what it is.
I used to have this little flag of a referee with the head up the ass. They
Yeah.
banned it from games now, but I used to bring it to every game, and whenever they'd come out on the ice, I'd go right up to the glass and fly it for them.
Oh yeah, I couldn't remember who it was. It was back in the old United Hockey League days, and there was a referee that the Mallards always hated, and every time he was in town, the fans would just chant at him. It was just hilarious. It's one of my like earliest hockey memories I can think of growing up.
Hockey's been very good to me just in general. I was actually able to catch the last game that the Mallards had ever played at the UCHL level, because I went there when Cincinnati played them,
Oh
and it
really?
ended up being the last game. But I've also been able to meet some amazing people around the hockey world, like Shaw Boomhauer comes to mind, Brian Devine, big
Mhm.
SPHL heavyweight, you probably know.
Yeah, as well
I've
there
been
with
able
Kansas City now.
to meet Brennan Wong. I've been able to, through Brennan Wong, work with the player agent of guys like Connor McDavid and Tyson Berry. And hockey's just been very good to me, even just as a fan. And I want to share this game with as much people as I can. Unfortunately, not a lot of people care about it in Cincinnati, but what are your ideas to grow the game?
Um, to grow the game, there's a bunch of different things. I will say, for starters, at the ECHL, maybe allow fans to post broadcast footage for starters. I think that'd be
I know,
that'd be a
right? I
good one.
still get like little copyright things for the music on YouTube when I post like a goalie dance or something. And it's like,
Yeah,
I cannot control what they're playing, but okay, you make your money, even
yeah.
though I'm not
So
making anything off of it in the first place.
yeah, I just got a copyright notice the other night I think it was like last night from the ECHL because I posted it was like the Darian Skio fight video on YouTube or whatever, and apparently they didn't like it. So I think that's one way that at least at the ECHL level, that because they're the only league that does this. There's no other hockey league that does the
At least they
whole
don't have
copyright
blackout
thing.
dates like the MLB.
Yeah, that too. There's no blackout dates. But in terms of growing the game of hockey, I think I don't know. It's bigger than it's ever been. The only problem is I think some of it gets saturated with how many, because it's like everybody's looking like, where do we expand next? Expand next. It's like, when does it become, I guess, too much? At the NHL level anyway, because I mean 32 teams, that's a lot. Is a lot of teams.
Yeah. And I was just talking about this with a friend the other day when I was bringing up roster sizes, because we only can have 21 players for the first month, and
Mhm.
then for the next, like, I think it's like 8 or 9 months depending on how long you're in the playoffs, you are only allowed to have 20 skaters.
Yep.
And keep in mind, I think you're like dressing at least 18 of those, because you can have either 7 defensemen and 10 forwards, or you can have 11 forwards and 6 defensemen. So you're dressing a fair bit of that. You only have really about 2 spots that are not playing on any given night if everybody's healthy. So I was bringing up the point of, hey, we should probably want to expand the roster sizes, because especially with the Cyclones, like, there's some really great guys that I think are going to need to be released, like James Hardy, Adam Berg. And it's not just about not performing in preseason. It's just there's guys that have performed better and they don't have the space to be able to have it. And the thing that gets brought up as a problem with that is funds. I personally think that if you can't fund 2 extra roster spots, then you shouldn't really even be having a team in that market. You need to have markets that you can grow with.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it comes down to. That might be something with like whether it's a CBA or something between the owners and then the league, because I know they meet every year, and that's where like how we saw the fight rules come out this year, and that was between the owners and the league meeting. So I wonder if it's something with them there, if they have to agree to allow another roster spot, because it's going to be I like, for example, like a team like, I don't know, like Toledo or Fort Wayne. I don't think they'd have any problem filling another roster spot, but then you go down to like maybe like Tulsa or Allen or Reading, where attendance is a little bit lower in those markets. Maybe they would have trouble with a roster spot because it's the team just doesn't make as much money. So it's very team dependent, I think, and that's what it's going to lean to. So if like the majority of the teams can't afford it, I don't think they're going to do it, because it wouldn't the owners probably wouldn't agree to it.
Yeah. And that's the problem with this league. It's
Right.
always a money thing. You can't really do a lot because some of these markets are pretty small. Like you saw
Hmm.
Brampton had to fold, and
Yep.
they're, I think, the only COVID casualty in the league, other than I think maybe the Monarchs you could make a case for.
Right.
But there's money, and if it's not being made, a team has to fold. And that's the sad part, where everybody can't have a team just because these small markets are not able to be profitable.
Right. And we'll see. I mean, only time will tell, because it seems like Savannah's been pretty profitable for them. And I know I believe it's next year. Is that when they expand to Salt Lake City out there in Utah?
Yes. I think
Um,
that 2024 or 25 is when they had that date.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I think that's going to be a great market out there. So who knows? I think it'll be a good rivalry with the Utah Grizzlies now too.
Yeah. And they have to be affiliated with the Henderson Silver Knights and those
Yep.
guys because they're already over there.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be a bit different. It's funny to see Henderson is affiliated with the Savannah Ghost Pirates of all teams. So that's quite a far trip from Georgia all the way out there to Nevada.
There's been a lot of turnover too in this league. Like you see guys like Lincoln Griffin going overseas to make more money because
Mhm.
of salaries. And that's another thing that comes into the roster is, are you going to be able to keep the guys you know are talented enough to stay?
Right, exactly. And I mean, we saw especially with Cincinnati. I mean, look at Sean Allen; he's over there in the UK now. And I know a few players. I know Arvin Atwall went over there from the Cyclones after he was with you guys there.
Yeah, Matt Barry also went over, and Josh Burnside. You
And
lose
I
a lot of
remember,
guys in the offseason overseas in the ECHL.
yeah, it's weird, because then you'll see them, they'll go there for like maybe a season or two and then come back sometimes. So for a
Just
guy
look
like
at
Sean
Justin
Allen,
Danforth, though. He went overseas after being on an AHL contract with their affiliate. Then he comes
mhm,
back on an NHL deal.
yeah, so
So it could just
it's
be an
weird.
opportunities thing too.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be just, getting yourself known. Because obviously over there in the UK, for a guy like Sean Allen, he's probably not going to have to fight as much. The league's just not as tough. So
Yeah.
maybe he could showcase himself off a little bit more, and maybe get the eye for like an AHL team or something like that. So like you said, it definitely could be an opportunity thing as well.
Yeah. And so we're going to move on to that next topic, which I have been waiting to ask you this. Who are some guys that you looked up to, whether it's childhood or just in the past, that were enforcers that you always loved to watch fight?
Um, the biggest one that comes to mind is Andre Waugh for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I grew up a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, and he was kind of the lone gun out there. The Tampa Bay Lightning never really had multiple enforcers since like the 90s. At one point, they had like 4 on the one roster. It was insane. But after that, once you started getting into the early 2000s, it was really nobody else. So it was just pretty much just Andre Waugh and Chris Dingman here and there sometimes. So always looked up to Andre Waugh. He was one of my favorites, and I always still remember hearing the arena would chant like "We want Waugh" when they would, when they'd want him to go out there and start something. So it was always a good time watching him fight.
Yeah, Cincinnati's had some pretty decent enforcers over the years. Like we've had Mike Liambis, who just
Hmm.
retired a few years ago now. Ben Olsen, we've had Jonathan Diaby, who's now on an actual TV series, which I
Yep.
find hilarious that you go from hockey to TV. And he's
Yeah.
actually having pretty success. It's a pretty good show.
Yeah, it is. I enjoy that show. It's Shorzy out there, right?
Yep, Shorzy.
Yep.
coming out with season 2 here in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And we've also had, who's one of my personal favorites, Jaden Rissling. He was
Mhm.
tall. He wasn't very robust in the fact of he is a big guy, other than he's just tall, but he got the job done. He wasn't afraid to drop the gloves. And I grew up watching him for like 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Uh, so who are guys this season that you would like to see have a tilt?
Oh man, I am really curious to see Ryan Devine versus not anybody specific, but more so in like the same kind of heavyweight category, like maybe like a Collins, a Skio, something like that. Just to be, I want to see how he does at the ECHL level. Because we've seen him fight SPHL guys, which hey, no disrespect to those guys, but I just don't think they're quite in the same caliber as the guys like we met, like a Josh Thrower, Yannick Turcotte, guys like that. I think that's just a next step above. Like it's just they were just they came up playing at a different time where toughness was necessary, and these guys are like chiseled. They know what they're doing. So I'm curious to see how Ryan Devine does against a guy like those, like one of those guys I just named. So that's definitely a fight I want to see. Another one I'd like to see is maybe Ortabody versus Turcotte out there. I know Ortabody's with the Railers. He just had a good fight last night in the preseason. I know Turcotte had a tilt as well, so both guys are already trying to get some muscle memory going, I think, and get ready for the regular season. So I think it's going to be a great season, though.
It's gonna definitely be a great season. If not for all the goals, there's probably gonna be a lot of fights. Some
Yeah,
guys that I would like to see go are Bellant and the small guy here on team.
yeah.
I can't remember his name, but we signed him out of what's it? Yeah, never mind. I can't think of the name.
No, you're good, man.
But also I want to see guys like Brandon Yalmans and like Shaw Boomhauer go. I
Mhm.
think that could be an amazing tilt.
Yeah, for sure. Two guys like those two guys are. They're not the biggest, but when they do
They're not
fight,
the
it, like
biggest, but they
they're
know how to throw them.
yeah, exactly. They're awesome.
I'm still great friends with Shaw to this day. I'm on the Snap and we text occasionally, but I was offered like $2,000 for his jersey, which he actually wore in his pro debut. I paid about $575 for it, and I said no to 2,000 just because I liked him so much. He's a
Yeah,
very special
exactly.
player.
Yeah, it's one of those players that he's a kind of that like ham and egg lunch pail kind of guy, just goes out, grinds, and gets it done. And those are the guys that you respect, and those are the ones that always win over the hearts of minor pro, like blue collar towns, you know?
Yeah, and hard work is definitely what gets it done. Just look at what happened with Na Yakupov.
Mm-hmm.
He had no worth ethic, probably a lot of talent, but he flamed out of the league within 4 or 5 years just because he couldn't work at it. You
Yeah.
need that hard work from guys.
No, exactly.
And that's really all I have for you today. Do you want to touch on any topics?
No, I think we're good. I think you covered a lot of the good ECHL fight talk, man. I'm excited for this season. I'm excited to see what happens with who comes out where in the standings, because of course the ECHL is such a shootout through every year. You never know who's going to be at the top, and a team who was super good last year could be a bottom feeder this year, so you never know. So I think it's gonna be a good season. But I want to say thank you for inviting me on the show, man. It was a lot of fun.
No problem, man. I enjoy your podcasts. Make sure if you're listening to this to check out his podcast too, Five for Fighting Podcast. You could also find him on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not sure about Facebook, but
Yeah, I got a Facebook. It's the
very,
same
very
thing, just
good
Five
at
for Fighting Podcast.
breaking down fights, and he is a very entertaining podcast.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, I will see you around hopefully.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for being on.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.